Allie.
And Jesse, and this is Design for Adventure.
We're a married couple figuring out family travel, Disney trips, running races, parenting,
And how to make adventures actually work in real life.
Yes, we travel with our kids.
And still manage to have a good time.
And if you love making memories and want an adventure that fits real life, you're in the right place. Welcome back, everyone. Today, it's just going to be me, since we're going to be talking about RunDisney. And my husband has no interest in it at all, so would not add any value to this conversation. So today, we're going to talk about what is RunDisney, what to expect. It's not going to be any training plans. I'm not going to talk about any registration tips because I have none for you. But really, we're just going to talk about maybe some decision making, whether a RunDisney event is right for you and your family, and if you want to make the RunDisney vacation. It's something I've done a lot of. I really enjoy the races. I'm going back down in a few weeks for another one. Let's get to it. So one question I get is, why do I keep going back to Disney to do these RunDisney events? And one of the reasons, I think it's just a very different type of race experience. First off, the race support you get during all the distances is amazing. Not only are the crowd levels super high, you have people cheering for you in almost all parts of the course, which is a lot to ask for, especially on marathons. But you also have water every mile. You've got Gatorade. You even have food during the marathon. You have medical tents every couple miles, which is great. It really is amazing when it comes to the race support. And when you're running a marathon, 26 miles, that is very important. I've done 2 Disney marathons and 1 non, and I don't think I'll ever do a non-Disney marathon again just because of the race support. It really is top notch. I've already mentioned the crowds a bit, but along with the crowds, not only do you have fans lining the street in Main Street running into Magic Kingdom, but the entertainment. So Disney has characters all along the course at various places that you can take pictures with. Sometimes not. Sometimes they're in a situation where you can't take a picture with them, maybe just like a selfie. But then they also have other things. So not just characters, but they'll have blow-ups, or they had characters from the Festival of the Lion King one time. They'll have the parade floats out so you can look at them, take pictures with them. You're running through the parks, at least 2 parks for at least the longer distances. So you can take pictures in front of various things there. There's usually always a cast member around that can help you, can take a picture for you. It's a lot of fun. Another fun thing is costumes. So I get pretty into the costumes. I try and take like a running outfit, so running shirt, running skirt, pants, something like that, and I add to it to make a costume. So at least my base is actual running clothes, and then I add, maybe an overlay of a skirt or puff sleeves or, something in my hair to make me look like whatever character I'm trying to be. And it's fun because you just see some very elaborate costumes, some very subtle ones. You see themes, like groups of people running in the theme, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's one of those races where I won't say costumes are expected, because they're not, because you see plenty of people just running in normal clothes, but no one looks twice at you when you're wearing a costume, and I think that's fun. And there are other races out there, especially like obviously around Halloween, and there's other ones that do encourage a little bit of some costumes in the races, but Disney Break takes it to a whole new level, and I really love that. It kind of makes it fun, especially when you're going with like a group of friends and you're planning your outfit. Really have a good time getting into the theme that we've chosen, or maybe we're going along with the theme of the race. And then I've talked about the atmosphere of the race support, but it's really hard to describe. But when you're running down Main Street in Magic Kingdom toward the castle, there's just something amazing about that. When you go around behind it and then you run through the castle and you see the crowds and then you get to go take your picture in front of it. It's something different. They do such a good job with the entertainment and the race support. You never feel bored. Trust me, there are always going to be moments in a race where maybe there's just not a lot going on, but Disney does a good job for having very few of those, in my opinion. Everyone's going to have an opinion about courses, but in my opinion, they do a really good job, especially when compared to non-Disney races. And I am strictly speaking about the Walt Disney World races, not Disneyland, which has its own issues with having to run most of the race through Anaheim. But for the Walt Disney World races, I think they do a really good job of trying to keep it as entertaining as possible, even through some of the highway miles. So I mentioned I've done a lot of these Run Disney races. So I've done Marathon Weekend 3 times. I've run the 10K, the half, and the marathon, each one various times. So I've done the marathon twice. I've done the 10K maybe once or twice that weekend, and the half marathon. And then I've done Wine and Dine once. I did the challenge. And then I've done the Princess Weekend 4 times. The first time that was my first ever Run Disney race back in 2011. So I've been going for a long time, and I have seen the changes that have happened over the last, oh my gosh, we're at like 15 years now, which is kind of crazy. And then I did do the Disneyland half marathon back in 2012. I got my Coast to Coast medal for that. It was very different than how it is now. I think I thoroughly enjoyed that race, but I know what those races are now is not what I experienced back in 2012. And as of right now, I do believe they are no longer doing the Disneyland races just because of construction and I think some other things. They say they're going to come back. I don't know how long this hiatus is going to be for, but hopefully they do, because those are fun. Those are fun to go out to Disneyland and run. And if you are an East Coast person who goes to Disneyland to run, those early mornings are not that bad because of the time change. So I've talked about, why do I like Run Disney, but what are the options? So currently there are 4 race weekends. There are 3 virtual series, but I don't do virtual races. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go on the website and look and see when they are and what you can get. Disneyland, as I mentioned before, is no longer doing their races. So really it's just the 4 weekends that are now at Walt Disney World. And I'll go through them by calendar year. So the first weekend is going to be your marathon weekend. That's your big one. So it's in January, usually the first or second weekend. I've done it where it's been really close to New Year's, and that's not a good thing because the crowds get really crazy. But usually it's pushed back, so it's about a week out from New Year's, which is always good. And this is where you're going to have your 4 distances. You're going to have your 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then your full marathon. And this one always follows the same theme every year. So your marathon is always going to be Mickey and Minnie. Your half is always going to be Donald and Daisy. Your 10K, I do believe, is Chip and Dale, but don't quote me on that one. I forget now. And then your 5K is going to be Pluto. And those are subject to change, but really your marathon and half are not going to change. And since it's January, I will say the weather can be unpredictable. I've run the marathon when it's been freezing. So long sleeves, gloves, hat. Wish I had pants, but didn't. And then I've run it where it's been crazy hot. So you're finishing it and you're drenched in sweat and you're already in a tank top and shorts. So really, the weather is super unpredictable in January. So you can get really cold, you can get really hot. It seems like there's no in between when it comes to Florida in January. But know that it's still going to be super humid no matter what. And then the registration is usually going to be done in March timeframe. So it's 9 months away. So that's something to always keep in mind for all these races, is that you have to register 9 months in advance. The next one is your Princess Half Marathon weekend. So this one is usually one of the last weekends in February. So not on the same weekend as President's Day, but usually the weekend after or 2 weekends after. This year it seems pretty late because it goes into March, which is a little later than normal, I felt like. But I'll take it. We'll see how it goes. This one has 3 races. So you have the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon. And the theme is always going to be a princess. So each race will have its own princess. And then the challenge, which is the 10K and half marathon, will then have another princess as a challenge. It's always going to be a princess. You never know which ones you might get. They always announce them a few weeks before registration, so you know. But it's going to be princess themed. I ran it back in the day when it was just a crown every time. There was no changing. So 3 of my medals all look almost identical except for the year on it. So it's kind of crazy to see how far it's come in the last 15 years. And then usually princess is pretty warm. It's usually, you're going to be in the 70s by the time you finish, maybe 80s, depends on the year. I did have one though, we ran the 10K and I remember freezing. I was supposed to throw a sweatshirt like down because they collect the clothes for charity. I kept it because I was just so cold the entire race. It was brutally cold that year. Just so randomly had a cold front come through in February. It can happen. And that registration is going to be in June. So something, again, plan for. You're going to be registering in June for a race in February. The next one is Springtime Surprise, and that one is in April. So this is the one they've kind of kept to make it whatever theme they want every year. It used to be, if you know any of the history of Run Disney, there used to be a Star Wars weekend, a Marvel weekend, Tinkerbell half marathon. And so what they did is they kind of got rid of all those and just made a Springtime Surprise. This one used to be the Tower of Terror 10 miler. So then they changed it to just a Springtime Surprise so they could change the theme every year. It's usually a 10 miler. I think when they first announced it, they didn't confirm it would always be a 10 miler. But I think since this type of theme, it always has been. But then you also have the 5K and 10K, and then you can still do the 2-course challenge, which is going to be your 10K and the 10 miler. Again, I've never run this one, but looking at the course, it actually looks kind of fun. It's going to be a new theme every year. I think last year it was maybe Lion King. So it's always interesting to see what they're going to do with it each year. And then this one, registration is in July. I will say, looking at the history and as things sell out, this one is the easiest to register for whatever reason. Maybe it's the time of year, it's just the distance. It's not as popular as some of the other races. But if you're being shut out of other races, this may be one that you look to doing just because it took a couple hours, actually, I think last year for the 10 miler to sell out. So just something to keep in mind. And then the last one, which is a very popular race, judging by how fast it sold out this year, is the Wine and Dine. So this is the one it used to be in November, but they've moved it back into October now, into mid-October. You have your 5K, your 10K, and your half marathon. It's extremely popular. And I'm not sure why, if it's the time of year or their themes they pick, but it's a very popular race. One of the unique things about this weekend is they have an after party at Epcot that Sunday night after the half marathon is over. So you get a special ticket. It comes with the price of your bib, which is nice. So at like 4 p.m., you can get into Epcot, and then they have an after party, and I think it lasts till midnight, 11, 1 a.m., something like that. It's happening during the food festival, so they keep all the booths open, and they bring out special characters. So a lot of people, I think, really enjoy that aspect. And again, if you know the history of Run Disney, this used to be a night race. So after I think it was like 3 years in a row of where they had to cancel or shorten the race because of thunderstorms, they moved it to a normal start at 5 a.m. race, and they haven't changed it back, which is kind of a bummer since it was a really unique experience. It was one I always wanted to do at night, but never got to it until they had already moved it to the typical 5 a.m. start. And again, this one, the registration is in February, so it did just pass this year, and it was popular. I think it took an hour and 15 minutes for almost everything to sell out, which is really, really quick. So if you like Wine and Dine, this is one where it may take a little bit to get into it, and you may need to have some other plans for that race weekend. So I've mentioned some of the distances that are available, but every weekend is going to have a 5K available. Now, the thing with the 5K, it's not timed. It's actually a fun run. I think there might be corrals, but again, it's not timed. So there's no winners. It's really just a fun run. They have a clock going, I think. I'm not even sure. I've never actually done the 5K because it just kind of seems expensive for a fun run, in my opinion. I can run 3 miles around my resort if I want. But not to say that it isn't bad, especially if you're new to running or new to Run Disney and this is the one race you can get into, or you just want to try it out. Do the 5K. I've heard really good things about it. I know people will enjoy it and have fun, but it's just not something I have personally done because I tend to like the longer races anyways. The next is a 10K. So that is also going to be at every race weekend. In my opinion, these are the best courses, are the 10K courses. You stay fully within the parks almost, except for maybe the first mile or so, and that's usually okay because you're trying to get the runners spread out anyways. But It's usually through Epcot, the boardwalk area. I don't think you get into Hollywood Studios, but by the time you do Epcot and the boardwalk area and get back, you've hit your 6 miles and it's super fun. I love the 10K. I try and do it when I can, but sometimes I have to make decisions on what races I'm going to do. And then a half marathon. Again, it's going to be at all of your race weekends except the 10 miler. So your half marathon, there are 2 different courses. Your first course I'll talk about is the Wine and Dine course. This course only touches Epcot and Hollywood Studios. So you run through Epcot, you run through the boardwalk area in Hollywood Studios, I think back through the boardwalk area back in Epcot, or there might be some road in there too, so you only hit the boardwalk area once. But it's a really great course. There's not as much highway time as the other ones because your Epcot and Hollywood Studios are so close to each other. But I really do like that course. You don't see the castle though at Magic Kingdom, so just know that you're going to be spending the majority of your time at Epcot and Hollywood Studios. Then the other course, which is for the Princess and the Marathon weekend, that course goes to Magic Kingdom. So you start at Epcot, you run through Epcot a bit, you go run through the highway all the way up to Magic Kingdom, go through Magic Kingdom, turn around, and you come back. And then you run through Epcot and you finish there in the parking lot. That one has a lot more highway time just because the parks are so far away. So just know that. You do get to spend some time in Epcot and Magic Kingdom, but you're not going to be doing the boardwalk area. You're not doing Hollywood Studios. You're really going from Epcot, Magic Kingdom, and back. But that's where you get the really fun videos and pictures of people running down Main Street with the crowd and the castle in the background. And then also, of course, your castle picture of you running through the castle. And then all the people doing the jump photos in front of it. Those are going to be your Marathon Weekend Half Marathon and your Princess Half Marathon. And then the 10 miler for springtime. This one does go to Epcot and Hollywood Studios. Actually, after looking at the course, I'm really actually interested in doing the springtime. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks like an awesome course. That's kind of interesting. I've never even thought about it, but after seeing the course, this looks like one of the better courses that I've seen from Run Disney. I need to ask someone to confirm what I'm seeing on paper is what they've experienced, but you do run through Epcot and Hollywood Studios for the springtime surprise for the 10 miler. And then last but not least is the marathon. So this one is obviously only going to be during your marathon weekend. It goes through all 4 parks. So you start in Epcot, you run to Magic Kingdom, you run to Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, you run through the boardwalk area, back into Epcot, and then finish. It is a really good course for a marathon, in my opinion, having run another one and seen a few others that I've cheered on. This one, it has your highway moments, don't get me wrong, that are boring, but they do a pretty good job of keeping as much entertainment as they can through those areas, keeping music up. People are out there cheering. You know, you have your medical tents and your aid stations that really help with that. Or you run by a lot of resorts, and those people from those resorts can actually walk down to the road to cheer you on, which is a lot of fun. So as you're running past the Contemporary, the Floridian, Shades of Green, people are out cheering, which is really fun. And especially on the boardwalk, you get everyone out on the boardwalk, Beach Club, Yacht Club out cheering you on as well. I really like the marathon course. Like I said, I've been ruined, it feels like. I don't know if I can run another marathon that's not at Disney, just because once you have that kind of cheering and entertainment and race support, when you go to a race that you have miles where there's no one around you and you're at mile like 18, it's not as fun. So that's why I think I like the marathon at Disney. So I've sort of mentioned some of the challenges, but I'll go through them really quick. So your typical challenge is going to be your 10K and your half or 10 miler. So Princess Weekend, Springtime Surprise, and Wine and Dine all have a 2-course challenge is what they call them. So it's a 10K plus the longer distance. They're fun. I've done them twice. They're early mornings, which can not be fun. But they're fun. If you're going and you're not going to maybe spending as much time in the parks, or you just really want to challenge yourself, do it. It's completely doable. When I did it, we would always just have fun for the 10K and take a bunch of pictures and then maybe be a little bit more serious about the half, or you can do it vice versa. Run a little bit faster for the 10K and maybe stop and just take your time with the half. Completely up to you. Depends on your speed, depends on what you want out of the race. But the challenges are fun. It's fun to get that 3rd medal and to wear it around and You get to be like, yeah, I did 2 races and this weekend. It's good times. You do need to train for them though. They can wear on your legs, especially after that second race. Now, the other challenges that are specific to marathon weekend are going to be the Goofy and the Dopey. So the Goofy is just the half marathon and the marathon. My mother has done it, and it seems bad, but not that bad compared to the Dopey. But it's a lot of training for it. You have to run 2 back-to-back long runs to make sure your legs can handle it. And I know people do the same thing. They may take their time at the half and maybe pick it up a little bit for the marathon or vice versa. It's just how they approach the race. But you do the Saturday and Sunday race of marathon weekend. You get an extra shirt and an extra medal for it. The Dopey, on the other hand, is all 4 races during the marathon weekend. So you're doing the 5K, 10K, half, and marathon. You do get an extra shirt and you do get an extra medal. Plus you get the Goofy shirt and medal. So you're coming out of there with 6 shirts, 6 medals. People love it. I have no desire to do this race. It just seems like a lot. It's just, I think one of the things that I would definitely don't want to do about it is the early morning. So if you ask anyone who does the Dopey, they'll tell you it's not the distance that's the worst part. It's waking up at 2:30 a.m. all 4 mornings in a row. It really wears on you, especially when your body's not used to waking up that early and then running that much. So I think the Dopey could be fun, but it's not something I ever have any desire to do. I like to do, if I am going to do 2 races in a weekend, I like to usually do the 10K and the marathon. So there's a gap in between, and I kind of treat that 10K as a shakeout run. And I think it's kind of fun. I told you it's my favorite course, so I do enjoy doing it when I can. And then the marathon is always fun, especially when you're running it with someone else, or if it's your first marathon, like it was mine. It's a lot of fun. Which race do you pick? What can you train for realistically? Can you train for a 5K, 10K, half? Maybe you're a seasoned runner and, you're just trying to look for something different. That's great. Then pick which race that you want to do. I tend to go for longer races. I prefer a half marathon. I usually pick the half marathon. I usually don't go for the challenge just because of price. And sometimes I also want to enjoy the vacation on top of it. So I don't want to wake up that early 2 days in a row. So I usually just stick with a half. But, if you really want to challenge yourself and do those 2 races, do it. But be realistic. Really, can you train for it? Are you going to train for it? Maybe just sticking to the 5K or 10K is a better option at this point in your life. That's fine. I'm a mom of 2. Training can be a challenge at times, and then injuries get on top of that. It's hard. This has been an interesting training schedule for me this year, training for the princess. I've been dealing with some injuries, just work and children, so I've not been as trained as I would like to be. I'll still finish, but it's going to be an interesting weekend. And also, a lot of people like to do their first marathon at Disney. Totally love that. It was my first marathon. Loved it. It was a great experience. My mother ran with me. We got through it. It was fun. I had so much ice on my legs at the end. Was shuffling around, doing the marathon shuffle after the race for the rest of the day. But I think it's a great first marathon. Now, some people like to do the Dopey and have the marathon their first marathon through the Dopey. I think that's a little crazier. If that's what you want to do, go for it. But I maybe you should just choose the marathon, maybe the 10K and marathon, if that's going to be your first marathon experience, because your legs are not going to feel normal unless you really put in the training and you follow the Dopey training out there. It's a lot of running on your legs, so be careful. Don't overtrain, don't hurt yourself. And that goes along. I know people have never run before and they sign up for the Dopey. And then they're going to run all 4 races. I just don't think that's a good idea. If you've never run a race before and you want to do the Dopey, maybe don't do it this year. Maybe do it the following year and run a race between them. Make sure you like running. Make sure you like running a race. And then if you're going to spend $800 on race registration, that you're going to be able to train and do it. Because training for Dopey is no joke. You do need to actually train for the Dopey. That's not a race you can just show up to the start line and do it. That's 4 distances and they get progressively longer and you get progressively tired. So just something to keep in mind. I talked a little bit about costs and how I make my choices. So I'm going to go through some of the prices here because RunDisney is not cheap. It's one of the more expensive races out there, on par with your Boston and some of your bigger races. Your 5K is going to cost you roughly about $125 right now for a 5K. That's a lot. 10K is $175, still a lot for a 10K. And your half marathon is roughly, and it's changing every year, it keeps going up, $269 for a half marathon, which is crazy. And then the challenge, if you want to do a challenge, which is 10K and half, you're looking at $449. So Dopey, when you add all of that up, last year Dopey cost $736, which is a crazy amount of money for those races. You get 6 shirts and you get 6 medals, but $736 is a lot. And then not only expensive, but we gotta talk about registration here. Registering for these races are difficult and expensive. You have to be ready to go on your computer before registration opens at 10 a.m. on Tuesday for whatever race you're registering for. And you have to do the prayer to the gods because it's random. It is very random on the order that is selected when you're in the waiting room and what order they put you into the queue to then register. I have been shut out of races. I have gotten in. And there is no rhyme or reason. I have no tricks. Some people are going to say, oh, this sort of works. Well, it worked for him one time. I guarantee you that trick is not going to work the next time. Registration is hard and you need to have a plan. You need to have a plan if you don't get in, and you need to have a plan if you do get in and what you're going to get, or the race you want is sold out. And so you're going to go for a different race. So if the race is sold out, are you just going to say no, thank you? Or are you going to be okay with just doing the half instead of the challenge or the 10K? Usually the 10K goes first, sells out first, usually within like 45 minutes. The challenge is usually next around an hour, at least with the wine and dine. And then the half marathon sells out after that, usually around like an hour and 15 minutes, at least for the wine and dine it did. And then for the 5K, they've added more bibs to all the race weekends. It did take an hour and a half to sell out for the 5K. So typically the 5K has been earlier to sell out, but it's the last one to sell out. So that is something to just keep in mind of how quickly. So don't think you can register that night or you can just like sign on a minute or two late. You've got to be ready to go. There is something I want to mention. It's Club RunDisney. So this is an option to basically buy early registration. I'm really mad that RunDisney did this, and I'm really even more mad that people have actually bought into it. Because to do Club RunDisney for 1 year, there's technically 3 different platforms, but one of them gets you nothing except the ability to buy the other 2. For like the silver membership, it's like $635, and you get you can register one person early for every race weekend for 1 year. And then there's the gold membership, which is $993 for a year. And you get better corral placement. So you basically get in B or C. And then you get to register 2 people per race for 1 race year. So for $1,000, you're just saying you get early registration and better corral placement. And it's just, that's crazy. I'd rather do a charity bib than spend $993 on Club RunDisney. At least that money's going to charity. If you have it, that's fine. That's up to you. You've made that decision. And if it works for you, it works for you. But that just seems a little crazy that you're just spending that much more money for these races that we already talked about are so expensive to get into registration. Beyond the registration, you're also going to hear about proof of time and corral placement. So how Disney does it is that you have to put in a proof of time to be placed in a certain corral. And RunDisney they control those corrals very closely. They have people at the entrances of them, and they check your bib to make sure that the letter is on there that corresponds with that corral. You can move back. So if you have A, you can move back to B or C. But if you're in C, you cannot move up to B or A. You can only go into C or backwards. They do this with proof of time. So basically you have to prove to them that you've run a race at a certain time, and then they will place you in a corral that corresponds with it. So right now you can only submit proof of time up to 2 hours and 15 minutes for a half marathon. So anything over that, I won't say they don't look at or they don't take it into account, but they're just going to place you then in the later corrals. So if you have a proof of time that is faster than 2 hours and 15 minutes, you'll get placed into the earlier corrals. In the past, it's been A and B, But looking at Princess Weekend, it looks like it's only going to be Corral A, which is kind of crazy to me. But we'll see how that goes and how big that corral is and truly what the corral looks like with the proof of time. So that's something to keep in mind because you usually have to have that proof of time in 6 months in advance. So for Princess Weekend, we had to have it in by September 1st. So we had to have our races run by then. So that's also something to keep in mind. You live in a hotter state and you're signing up for a race and you have to have something done by September 1st. You probably want to get a proof of time done in the springtime before you're trying to run in Texas in September or August, because it's not fun. Having lived there at one point in my life, you just didn't run outside during that part of the year. Keep that in mind, proof of time, look at what race you want to run, see where that proof of time, when it's due by, and then try and plan early, even before registration if you need to, so you can get that proof of time that you want or need. And so for the half marathon, you can do a 10K half or longer. For the marathon, you need at least a 10-miler, half, or marathon for proof of time for the marathon. And then one last thing about the cost. Remember, you're going to Disney. So you're going to be paying for, hotel, travel, park tickets, possibly the food that goes along with it. And maybe if your family's coming, your family, it can get expensive quickly. If you're going by yourself or with just friends, maybe costs can be kept down if you want to stay off property too. But just something to keep in mind that, yes, not only do you pay for registration, but then you have all the other costs that really happen. So we've talked about the costs, but I wanted to do some reality checks too on RunDisney. I know it's gotten pretty popular the last few months and few years. It's really picked up, as we can see, as registrations are getting harder and harder to actually get through and to register for a race. One thing to know, there are no deferrals. There are no returns. You register and that's it. You cannot get your money back for any reason. You're injured, you get pregnant, something happens, your sister's getting married that weekend and you no longer can go. Doesn't matter. You're stuck with the bib. So know that. It's a 9-month planning in advance. So just look at your life and see what's going on. Another thing to keep in mind is they do have pacers for all these races, which is great for the half marathon and marathon. But they're going to be doing the Galloway method, which is the run-walk method. I like that method when I was coming off injuries and when I was after both pregnancies. I used it to get back into shape and back into running. I did it for a few months and it really worked for me, but I typically don't do the Galloway method when I'm running. I usually just run. So just something to keep in mind. If you are new to running, I definitely think it's something to look into to help you. It's a really good program. Like I said, I used it coming back from pregnancies. I think it's a great way to get into it. And if you like that method, keep doing it. My mom, that's how she runs, and she does great with it. So know yourself, try it out. And if you like it, that's great. And that's what the pace groups are going to do. So if you don't do the Galloway method and you want to run with a pace group, know that's what they're going to be doing. That may affect some decisions there. Whether you want to try it out, I wouldn't wait till the day of the race to just do it with them. I would try it a few times before you stick with that pace group, just so your body gets used to that stopping and picking back up, because it's different. You run faster because you end up walking. So it's different, but it is something to know about. So we've talked about registration, how difficult it is to get in. So, but pre-COVID, they actually had more bibs available for each race weekend. But since COVID, they haven't brought the races back up to how big they were before, which I'm not sure why. But the races are about 5,000 to 4,000 people shorter, like less bibs, and they've only gotten more popular. So that's why the difficulty right now in registration. It used to not be like this, but over the last few years, it's really gotten bad. But I'm bringing this up again is because if you're running with friends, you need to have a plan for if your friends don't get in. So if you're trying to everyone's trying to register for the half, what happens if only the 4 of you get in? Are you still going to go? What's plan B? What if you all want to run the challenge, but only one gets the challenge and the 3 of you can only get the half? Are you still okay running that race by yourself, the 10K? What's plan B? Are you going to do charity bibs? Those are an option. I have 2 friends who just did them for the princess and they did really well. They were able to raise their money. Or are you going to just stalk Telegram and hopefully get a bib that way and just think you can register within 2 minutes or less because there's probably 10,000 other people trying to do the same thing. Know that registration might not go the way you planned. So have a backup plan. And what is it? Charity bibs, Telegram, or is it if one of you doesn't get in, no one gets in. So you're going to register all of you at the same time. Whoever can get into registration the fastest is going to register all 4 of you. There are some issues when you're registering more than 2 people that I've read. I've never tried to do it myself, but know that's something you need to look into. I mentioned how you have to register 9 months in advance. You need to train. If you've gotten into these registrations, there are thousands of people who didn't. You need to then put in the work. Train for that race that you've signed up for, especially if you're doing a challenge or a longer race that maybe you've never done. Make sure you're training. Find a plan. There's so many out there now, especially for Dopey and Goofy, or even just the 10K and half. There are plans out there. There's all different types, not only Galloway method, but other methods. You can come up with your own. Heck, you can get AI to probably help you out with like ChatGPT to make a training plan. But just make sure you do it and realistically set goals for yourself. So that way you don't A, not finish, or B, you have an injury that then prevents you from even starting. Last thing I want to talk to about in this reality check section is a DNF, which means does not finish. What happens? So with all Run Disney events, a 16-minute pace is required to be kept on the course. So how they do this is they have what we call balloon ladies, that literally are just some ladies with balloons tied onto the back of them. And they maintain a 16-minute pace. And they start after the last runner crosses the start line. Then they go. So if you're starting a Corral A, you have a big buffer. So you can use that time as you will. But if you're starting near the back, you don't have as much of a buffer and really need to keep that 16-minute pace. This is why I'd always say try and train for a 15 or 14-minute pace if that is something that you're worried about or you're just a slower runner, knowing that you need to train for something a little bit faster. And this also takes into account if you're going to stop for pictures with characters in the marathon, if you want to ride some rides, which you can do in the marathon, you can ride a roller coaster, any rides that are open in Hollywood Studios and Epcot. You have to take into account the time that you are going to do that because that's still time being counted against you. The clock doesn't pause when you're doing something like that. So if you're standing in line for 20 minutes to see a character and those lines can get kind of long, you just have to count how close are those balloon ladies to you. If you're in the earlier corral, you might be fine. But if you're in a later one, you might just have to keep watch on where those balloon ladies are because you can't stop because you have to keep moving, especially if you're closer to that 16-minute pace. But if something does happen, you can't keep the pace, the balloon ladies pass you. There's usually people on bikes that are trying to motivate you to keep going. But if you're not moving fast enough or you're kind of stopped for some reason, they will then sweep you. So what they do is they basically at certain checkpoints along the course, they kind of stop everyone that has fallen too far behind and they put you on a bus and they take you back to the finish line. You usually do get your medal. It's up to you if you feel like you've earned it or not. I read mixed reviews on that, but do know that they will take you onto a bus and then they will take you back to the finish line. Again, some reports say that they wait till the bus is full before they take you back. Some people said they've gone back pretty quickly. So it really just depends on, I think, where you are in the course and that race that weekend. Talked a lot about the different races, what happens, some of the negative aspects to them with registration expense. There's no deferrals. But if you are lucky enough to get registered and you're getting there, what are some of the logistics of a Run Disney weekend? So one thing to note, Run Disney does not have packet pickup race morning. You have to pick your bib up and your packet the day before at the expo. You have to plan accordingly to make sure you're at Disney the day before and early enough before the expo closes. So the Saturday before that last race, the expo usually closes at 3 p.m. So you have to make sure you're there early enough Saturday to get to the expo at ESPN's Worldwide of Sports to pick up your bib. A lot of times I try and plan an extra day. So if I'm running only Sunday, I want to make sure I'm getting in on Friday at least. Because you want to give your buffer of if you're flying, especially if you're having delays, bad weather. But then also if you're driving, things can happen. you want to make sure you're giving yourself enough time too on Saturday to be able to get that bib. And I've had that happen. We had such a bad delay on Friday. We got in Friday night. We were supposed to go to the expo that day. Couldn't happen. Had to go on Saturday. I'm glad we had that extra day, or we would have been a world of hurt. There are some emergency situations that obviously Run Disney recognizes, but do not plan on that. Plan on being at the expo the day before. And they do a pretty good job with their expo. It's really big. They have a lot of vendors. I usually pick up gels and socks. A lot of times, too, if it's really cold and no one's planned for that, you'll see a lot of shirts and pants being sold. So it's one place you can pick up gloves, hats, things like that, too. Or if you forget your running shoes, which has happened, not to me, but I know of people it's happened to, and you have to buy new running shoes. They have vendors there for that as well. Another thing I want to mention, I've talked about it briefly, is that these races start at 5 a.m. All of them, 5K, 10K, half marathon, they all start at 5 a.m., which is early. Not because 5 a.m. is super early, it's because you have to be in your corral by 4 a.m. because they close roads. And so I mean by corral, I mean at least at the starting area by 4 a.m. They really want you on a bus by 3 a.m. And if you're parking, they want you driving there by 3 a.m. because they start closing the roads around Epcot and Magic Kingdom for this race since you're going to be running on parts of the highway. So what does that mean is you really need to be there, be on a bus around 3 a.m., 3:30. Usually I try and be on a bus by 3 a.m. So I'm waking up at 2:30. It's early. And so I'm talking about this bus. When you stay on Disney property, they actually provide busing for you to the race start. So every hotel on Disney property has chartered buses. There's a location, there's a sign, you'll see it, that you will go to. You'll line up, you'll get on the bus. Once it's full, they'll drive off, and another one usually comes in behind. I think that's one of the benefits of staying on properties, and you're not trying to deal with the road closures, construction that's probably happening, and other drivers and buses trying to get in, because it can get pretty tight, it feels like. And as you near Epcot, trying to park, there's a lot of traffic going on. So when you're staying on property, you don't have to deal with it. You can just take the bus. Now, the monorail does work for Princess Half Marathon and the marathon weekend for the half and full marathon. It does not run any other weekends. It only runs because the Magic Kingdom Road ends up closing, so then they run the monorail to help alleviate that traffic there. They don't run it during Wine and Dine or Springtime Surprise. So if you're staying at a monorail resort, you can use it only for the Princess Half Marathon and then the marathon weekend half and full. The Skyliner and boats will never be working during the Run Disney events, so do not ever plan on those. They don't start operating until after the races are usually done. And honestly, they take you not to the front of Epcot, which is where you need to be. So the boats and Skyliner drop you off at the back of Epcot. The race starts at the beginning. And also, there is no walking to the race start. So you can't walk from a resort to the race start. Even if you can be super close, and I know there's some resorts that are near the Epcot parking lot, you still can't walk. They'll have barricades, police. You won't be able to get through. And one last thing, this won't be a normal Disney trip. I've talked about the early mornings. It's going to be early. You have to plan time for the expo on one day, and that's going to take a morning or an afternoon. It's going to take a little bit of time to get from your resort to the expo, and then get through the expo to pick up your bib, your shirt, if you want to do a little shopping, and then to take the bus back to your resort. And you can only take the buses to ESPN from resorts, not from the actual parks. You have to plan in some time for that, and I'd say at least a few hours. It's really fun, I'll say, because everyone's wearing their medals during these weekends. You'll hear a lot of clanging, especially if people have done the challenge and have multiple medals. And everyone's wearing their race shirts, everyone's waving to each other, everyone's doing the marathon shuffle, especially on marathon weekend. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of knowing looks and, good job. And the characters really actually interact with you with your medals. It's kind of fun. The cast members do too. So I really do enjoy that aspect and going to the parks after a race, just because there's so much more interaction. It's kind of fun to be with everyone else who's done it as well. And for those who didn't know the Run Disney was going on and they're just on a normal Disney vacation, you do get some funny looks. especially during the marathon, because it's usually running through Epcot as the park is open. And you'll have these families who are just bewildered about this race just happening in the middle of Epcot. Disney does a great job of being able to control the crowds and get people across, so the runners aren't being interrupted and people are still able to make it around the park easily. But it is still fun to watch faces of these kids are like, what is happening, Mom? Who are these people? It's a good time. And I do enjoy that. Having been to Disney during a Run Disney event and during it, I think I prefer almost during the Run Disney events just because I feel like there's more camaraderie with everyone there because everyone's there for the same reason. They're all there for the race. You have your other families who aren't, but it's really fun when everyone's wearing their medals, their shirts, doing the marathon shuffle. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully, this entire conversation helped you decide on whether Run Disney is right for you or not, or maybe you want to think about trying to sign up for certain events or not. Run Disney is a lot of fun. I really have a good time. I just talked about how the atmosphere, it's a good time. It's a fun way to see the parks, and it's a different way. You get to see some of the backlot stuff through the courses, but registration is hard. You need a little bit of planning, and you need a little bit of luck to be able to get into the registration. And maybe a little savings because they're not cheap. So hopefully you can make the right decision for yourself. Don't buy into the hype. First, make a good decision for yourself, not just because everyone's doing it. I think it's a fun vacation. I will be taking my kids for the first time for a Run Disney event to Disney here in a few weeks. So we'll see how that goes versus just doing a trip with friends. Until next time, bye. Thanks so much for listening to Design for Adventure.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the show and leave a quick review. It really helps more families find us.
You can also find us on Instagram at Design for Adventure Pod and Facebook at Design for Adventure.
Until next time, don't be afraid to get out there and have an adventure.